Anything else you want to say to your fans, man?
Man, shout out to Dante's Boxing Nation. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, Errol Spence Jr., my whole name, and just look out for me.
Yes, sir. Let me dig into your brain.
You're one of the breakout stars of 2022, but you've been one of the breakout stars.
Right.
I'm not saying you beat Errol Spence, but guess what, Boots? I'm not saying Errol Spence is beating you either. Yeah. I think you can hang with anybody in the world at 147. I'm not saying Terence Crawford beats you, but I'm not saying you beat Terence Crawford. I'm saying these are fights that need to be made, and these are fights that should be made.
I'm ready and I'm waiting. Those guys, they know, and that's why they won't take a fight like me. But they all great fighters. But at the end of the day, everybody got to eat. And like I said before, this the start, and they can't keep putting me to the side. I'm going to make my statement in this boxing game in this welterweight division, and I will start this year.
Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? It is unbelievable when you think of the talent pool that America has when it comes to black fighters in general. America has more talent in the sport of boxing than any other country in the world, and they don't even take advantage of it. I'm talking about old media. Do you guys know if Jaron Ennis was from Kazakhstan, like Gennady Golovkin, if he was from the Philippines, like Manny Pacquiao, if he was from Mexico, like Canelo Alvarez, we already know what old media would be saying about him. We know how he would be promoted. When Gennady Golovkin, way before he fought Canelo Alvarez, when he was fighting fighters like Willie Monroe, when he was fighting fighters like Marco Antonio Rubio, they were already praising him as if he had beat Floyd Mayweather, Canelo Alvarez, and Andre Ward. While fighters like Jaron Ennis is not even really talked about that much when it comes to old media. It's obviously because he's on a coincidental list, but one of the best things about being on the coincidental list is as long as you keep winning, you cannot be denied. There's been so many times where old media has promoted a certain fighter as pound for pound the best fighter in the world, like a Chocolatito Gonzalez, for example, who came up around the same time that Terence Crawford came up. You fast forward to present day, and we see where Terence Crawford is, and we see where Roman Gonzalez is. Terence Crawford is still undefeated, and he's pound for pound the best fighter in the world today. With that being said, so first the boogeyman in the welterweight division was Errol Spence. Then it became Terence Crawford. Now the new generation boogeyman is Jaron Ennis. You guys just heard in that clip right there, Jaron, he did an interview with Fight Hype. You guys could watch the whole interview there. And Jaron Ennis, he basically said in a nutshell that he's coming for all of their belts. He's going to unify, or he wants to become the undisputed champion. And he said he should have one of their belts by the end of this year. He said by October. You also heard him explain, he was trying to say it in a nice, respectful way, but he was basically saying, there's a reason why these guys won't fight me. They know what it is. Let me start by saying this. To me, there is no doubt in my mind that Jaron Ennis is the future of the welterweight division. And I'm talking about the very, very near future. I don't believe that Terence Crawford or Errol Spence, they're going to fight him. I believe they're going to move up to 154. And no matter what they're talking about when it comes to splits and what PBC just recently said about how the money is not there, I don't think any of that stuff is going to matter. That fight is going to have to happen. It's inevitable because of the simple fact that they're both going to move up to 154. And if they both want the fight, none of that is going to matter what PBC is saying, what people are talking about when it comes to splits. None of that will matter if both of them want to fight against each other, which leaves the welterweight division all to Jaron Ennis. Now, even though it would be huge for Jaron Ennis to, of course, put Errol Spence or Terence Crawford on his resume, but the good news for Jaron Ennis is he can create his own legacy without those guys by once again taking over a division that will always be one of the deepest divisions in the sport of boxing. 147 historically has always been one of the toughest divisions to conquer. I mean, if you're a dictator and you're trying to conquer the world, It's easy to take over little small countries that have small, weak armies, right? But try to go conquer China or Russia or America. Now you got a real battle on your hands. And that is what the welterweight division is. Regardless of what happens in the Errol Spence versus Dennis Ugas fight, you still have Dennis Ugas as a possible opponent because I don't believe Dennis is planning on moving up to 154. You got Virgil Ortiz. You got Conor Benn. And then one of the biggest fights I truly believe for Jaron Ennis in the near future would be him versus Josh Taylor. Pound for pound, one of the best fighters, top 5. Pound for pound, one of the best fighters in the world. And a real undisputed champion at 140. A year from now, Josh Taylor will most likely be fighting at the welterweight division and will already have a couple of fights there. I mean, for me personally, yeah, it would be great if we got to see Jaron Ennis versus all of these guys. But at the end of the day, especially when it comes to Jaron Ennis, Errol Spence, and Terence Crawford, all 3 of these fighters are on the coincidental list. All 3 of these fighters will always be rooted against when it comes to the many racist boxing fans that exist in the sport of boxing in America today. So I personally prefer that Jaron Ennis is fighting against other fighters that are waving flags from other countries like Mexico and Conor Benn from the UK and so on and so forth. And I believe Errol Spence and Terence Crawford, they feel the same way when it comes to Jaron Ennis. He's the new generation. Let him create his own legacy by beating the fighters that old media in America is most likely going to promote over Jaron Ennis as the next big star in that division. Like I said, this is what old media did with Teofimo Lopez. They promoted him as this big future pound for pound #1 king. They did it with Roman Gonzalez. They did it with Canelo. They did it with Golovkin. They did it with Kovalev, and the list goes on and on and on. So once again, I say, if old media, if that's who they're going to be rooting for in all these decafs, then those are the fighters that fighters like Jaron Ennis, Terence Crawford, and Errol Spence should be going after first. But when the smoke clears and there's no one else to face because they beat everyone, that's when they should be fighting against each other. That's how we got those super fights like Leonard versus Hearns and Ali versus Frazier. They were the 2 best fighters in their division, so it obviously made all the sense in the world to make that fight. But things are really interesting right now for Jaron Ennis because he's not ranked #1 in any of the organizations in the welterweight division. I believe the highest he ranks is like #3. This is another reason why I believe by the time he becomes a mandatory in any of these organizations, there's a good chance that at least both or one, Errol Spence and Terence Crawford, will be moving up to 154. But I will say this, I believe if anyone is going to fight Jaron Ennis, I'm talking about out of the other welterweight champions right now, I truly believe that it would be Terence Crawford. And it's because Terence Crawford has a history of going after the most dangerous fighters. When Errol Spence was the true boogeyman at 147, nobody wanted to fight Errol Spence. Terence Crawford was the only fighter that was mentioning Errol Spence's name. He was the only one pulling up on Errol Spence. Nobody did that to Errol Spence. At least until Errol Spence, he started to become a name at 147 to where a lot of the PBC fighters, they had no choice but to fight him because it made too much sense financially, even if you were to lose to him. Matter of fact, Sean Porter is a perfect example of the point I just made because he made an interesting admission after he lost to Terence Crawford. He actually admitted that he was planning on the Errol Spence fight being his last fight. He was planning on retiring after that fight. So it kind of sounds like the Errol Spence fight to him was somewhat of a cash out type of fight. This is a dangerous fight. I may or may not win it. So let me just go in here, make as much money as I can. If I lose, especially if I get beat the hell up, I'll just go ahead and retire. But Sean Porter did so well in that fight. That's what gave him confidence to continue fighting. And once again, these are Sean Porter's own words. His own words were he was planning on retiring after the Errol Spence fight. And this is the reason why Sean Porter retired after the Terence Crawford fight, because that fight did play out the way he was hoping the Errol Spence fight wouldn't play out. So with that being said, I doubt it if all three of these guys end up facing each other, but I think there's a very, very good chance that at least two of them will face each other. And I believe it's going to end up being Spence versus Crawford, because that's the biggest fight in boxing. That's the fight that we've been talking about for the last 2 or 3 years. There's no doubt about it. That fight would make far more sense being first than them once again fighting against the next generation fighter. That would be like Floyd Mayweather not fighting Manny Pacquiao and instead fighting Keith Thurman. So in a perfect boxing world, we'd get to see all three of these guys clash, but I'll settle for Spence versus Crawford, or even Terence Crawford moving up to 154 if he can't get the Spence fight and fighting the winner of Charlo versus Castaño. 154 is going to be well, actually it already is. It's just as stacked as the 147-pound division is, because at 154, of course, you got Charlo, you got Castaño, you got Lara, and then you have Tim Tszyu, Costa Tszyu's son, who's a new mandatory at 154. There's going to be a lot of fireworks once again, probably next year, starting the end of this year. I'll close out with saying this. Obviously, there's no guarantees. Anything can happen in the sport of boxing, but there's a very, very good chance that Jaron Ennis, he can end up conquering the 147-pound division within the next year, like he's projecting. He will definitely become the mandatory within a year for some of these belts. That's when it's going to get really interesting. I think I said it already, Virgil Ortiz is already the #1 contender for the WBO belt. If I'm not mistaken, I believe he's #1 for Errol Spence's belt as well. And if the Crawford-Spence fight is not going to happen next, Spence and Crawford, they should both be going after Virgil Ortiz, because that is a huge fight. It's a huge fight because, once again, it's the biggest rivalry in the sport of boxing, black versus Mexican. People never want to admit this, but if you don't believe me, all you have to do is read the comments on the internet whenever there's a conversation about a black fighter and a Mexican fighter. On top of that, we all know Mexican fighters, they have a huge Mexican fan base. So any one of those guys, Errol Spence or Terence Crawford, they should both be going after Virgil Ortiz if they're not going to fight against each other next. With that being said, I'm going to wrap this video up. That's all I got for now, guys. I'm on to the next one. All right, now check this out, guys. If you're looking to repair eczema scars, burns and bruises, dark spots and blemishes, then this right here is the perfect product for you guys. It's called Elo Key Face and Body Oil. Athletes and top-ranking boxers, they're also using it after training to reduce swelling, inflammation, and to ease the pain. So get yours today. Go to elodekey.com, like them on Facebook, and follow them on Instagram. Fellas, I've got some great news for you. If you've lost your hair or have a receding hairline, the time has come when you can finally get your hairline back through a process called scalp micropigmentation. So here's how it works. It's a hair tattoo that replicates the look of your hair follicles when you have fully shaved it down. So to get this hookup, make sure you follow and contact my man Scalp Carolinas on Instagram. Let me tell you guys about this company, NWA Cane Corsos. They breed Cane Corso Mastiffs, which is a guardian dog that is treasured for its protective nature and strong loyalty to family. If you're looking for a family-friendly dog that's intelligent, muscular, and brave enough to take on any intruder, then you need a Cane Corso Mastiff. Cane Corsos are extremely versatile, performing well in a variety of activities such as hunting, agility, competitions, and obedience trials. With its athleticism and versatility as a hunting dog, guard dog, sports dog, and a show dog, the Cane Corso Mastiff is perfect for any family. They also have standard French bulldogs with excellent health, structure, temperament, and superior bloodlines with many champions in present day and pedigrees. Visit NWA Cane Corsos on all social media platforms to find the perfect puppy for your home today.